Alrighty, you guys, and we are back. This is the Jared Nicole Show every Tuesdays from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and get ready to bring on our guest for today, Mr. Michael. And so I'm going to go ahead and add him to the stream. Let's see if we can get him on here. Hi, Michael.
Hey, what's up, my friend? How are you?
I am great. How are you today?
So good to be alive.
Yes, right? So great to be alive. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today and taking time out of your day to do this. I really appreciate it. So I just want to go ahead and get started by letting you introduce yourself to viewers and everyone, and then we will just dive right into the conversation from there.
Yeah, so I'm Michael Anthony, author, speaker, coach, and advocate for adult survivors of childhood trauma. And I spend all of my time being obsessed with trying to figure out how to end generational trauma.
Wow. So just kind of walk us through and give us a little bit of background. Why childhood trauma? What led you to what inspired you to go down this path?
Yeah, well, it's my experience, high-level elevator pitch version. I grew up in poverty. Mom was a drug addict and alcoholic. She actually cut off my right index finger when I was only 4 years old. Stepfather, super abusive. We were homeless for a lot of our childhood. I mean, I'd literally have to steal food and water to survive at points. And I grew up in Indianapolis. I grew up in America. By the time I was 12, I got high for the first time, got expelled from school when I was 15, sold drugs, ran with guns, hurt people. My 3 childhood best friends have been murdered. By the time I was 18, I didn't graduate high school on time, and I was looking at the world through this scope of blame and victim mentality, and I found myself deciding to chase money legally, which is very important because my friends were getting arrested. I got family in prison for life, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this legally. Sure enough, by the time I was 21, I was making 6 figures with a Fortune 50 company, which is almost impossible to do. And then by the time I was 25, I was 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs a day, drinking myself to sleep, put a gun in my mouth. And then I finally understood everything happening in my life was because of the trauma I experienced. Fast forward 11 years later, here I am talking to you.
Wow.
That's elevator pitch.
Yeah, I'm just like, wow. Like, that's what I'm saying. Literally lost for words. That is just so much. I can't even imagine going through that. So, okay, let's talk about the transition. You said after going through all of that, you're here today. You're a coach, you're an author, you're a speaker, you're helping people overcome their childhood trauma. So what are some of the key things for people who are struggling with childhood trauma and they can't seem to move past it or get over it? How can they get past it? What is Think Unbroken about in the message behind that? How do you help people overcome their childhood trauma?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, there's no getting over it. Like, you can't magically make this disappear. You know what I mean? And that's part of the nomenclature of the society that we live in, where people say, get over it, man up, woman up, stop being a baby, figure it out, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't work. That's never worked in history. And Think Unbroken, our mission, the number one thing is ending generational trauma through creating an expansion of healing through A, helping adults and creating a trickle-down effect into the youth, and then B, from the youth and creating a trickle-up effect and expansion. Because ultimately, the number one thing that we have to understand about the world is, like, if we want to be the change we want to see in the world, then we have to thus create change, and change only happens through action. If you're in this place, to answer your first question, where you're understanding perhaps for the first time that maybe something happened to you, the number one thing is you have to acknowledge it. And that's really, really difficult. It's really hard. It's probably the hardest thing that we do because, when I found myself in my 20s, kind of in this rock bottom moment, it was because I never acknowledged it. I pushed it down. And we understand now from a literal scientific perspective that the body consumes that stress and it needs to find a way to get that out. And for me, it was like, hey, 5 panic attacks a day for 3 years until I was like, okay, maybe there's a problem here. And like, it's within the acknowledgement. It's within the sitting in it and saying, yeah, actually, you know what? Some bad things happened to me, that you start to be able to move forward. Now, that doesn't make you culpable for them. Let's be very clear. but it does mean that you have to talk about it. It does mean that if your life is a disaster, which for many people it is,
Yeah.
especially in minority communities, impoverished communities, that entire impact carries on weight that is like undescribable. And you find yourself in this position where you're like, why is my world upside down? Why am I suffering? Why am I hurting? Why does it seem like every turn that I make is a problem and I can't seem to
Right.
have control over my life? There's likely a catalyst for that.
Mm, mm. So I know one of the key things you mentioned is acknowledging it, and people struggle to acknowledge it. It takes them to a bad place. They don't want to really admit to themselves fully that it's there. So now let's talk about moving from you acknowledged it, but then what about acknowledging your abusers, the people who caused the childhood trauma in your life? What should someone who maybe they've acknowledged the abuse, they know it happens, but in terms of trying to forgive their abuser or move past that, what are some tips and advice you would offer? And how should they go about, how should they approach that? Because it's really heavy to try to forgive the people who, caused all of this.
Yeah, I mean, you said it very poignantly. Like realistically, and I will say this: I get so much pushback on what I'm about to say because it goes against the status quo. I
Hmm.
don't know that you do have to forgive people. You do have to let go of it. You do have to let go of the impact that it carries and the weight that it presents over you.
Mm.
Today, at 36 years old, looking at my life and carrying the scar of this finger my mother cut off, I'm
Wow.
never going to forgive her, but I don't carry the weight of it. It doesn't impact my choices and my decisions in my life. It has thus become a part of my narrative and a part of my story. It is a part of effectively who I am. But the anger, the sadness, the frustration, all of the things, they are going to ebb and flow and come and go because we are humans and we have a human emotions. Now, forgiveness often is touted as this thing that we have to allot to other people. But my
Right.
challenge with that is often like if within the same construct of the ideal that respect is earned, not given, thus then shouldn't most things, all acknowledgments, thus be in alignment with being earned? Have you earned my forgiveness? Have you shown up? Have you created the change in your life to prove to me? Because here's what happens. People punch their wives in the face and they go, "Oh, I'm sorry." And then they go, "Oh, yes, I forgive them." And then they do it again, right?
Mm.
That's just a general idea that comes to mind right off the bat. Like I think that's a terrible analogy, like realistically, but it's the truth.
Right.
Thus, we go, well, you have to forgive them for you. Well, do you though? Because to me, I feel like if I want to forgive someone in my life, it should be discretionary and it should be based upon the foundation of them proving that they're
Mm.
changing their lives. People who are murderers on death row, they often find solace in being forgiven by those of the family who they hurt, but that comes through the action, right?
Mm.
They've created the change. They've gone through reform. And for many of them, and hopefully they get out into the world again and they can rectify that mistake and forgiveness is earned. But
Mm.
to automatically allot something that is so powerful to someone with no provocation, I question that.
Mm. That is so interesting because, like you said, I most people always say you have to forgive them. If you don't forgive them, you're going to carry the weight. It's going to be a burden on you. You're never going to be able to move forward or move past it. So the examples that you provided really were interesting, and you have a point. What are people doing to earn their forgiveness? Are they just going to continue to like repeat the actions because they know eventually they'll forgive me or they'll let it go, so it's not that big of a deal? But that's really, really important and definitely different than the status quo. So my next question for you is, for what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions and myths surrounding childhood trauma and people who are suffering from childhood trauma?
Well, all of it. We don't talk about it in this country. Somehow
Mm.
it's okay. Like, think about this. I'm not being crass. This is a really, like, this is for real.
Mm.
You could kick your dog and go to prison, and you could beat the crap out of your kid, and
Mm.
nothing will happen to you. How is that okay? How do
Right.
we live in a society that allows that? So the biggest thing that we have to demystify in it is the fact that it's actually happening. It's next door to
Mm,
you, it's in your neighborhood, it's at your
mm,
church, it's at your community, it's at your job, it's at the people that you hang out with on the weekends, it's the
right.
people who go, well, I have to teach my kid manners, so I'm going to beat the crap out of them. What planet do we live on where that makes any rational sense? And
Mm,
so we're faced with this really hard dilemma, because we come up with the understanding that we have to have this stern lead by example, fist over everything mentality, but you're creating generations of children who turn into adults with childlike symptoms,
mm,
meaning they can't communicate, they can't step into their emotional capacity, they can't talk about conflict without yelling or breaking something. Why? Because it's learned behavior. Because
mm,
every single day that we are reinforcing these negative stereotypes, which are actually factual, we are doing a detriment to society. Every
mm,
time someone hits their kid, belittles them, does the thing that their parents did to raise them right, you're not making the world a better place.
mm. Absolutely. So for you, when people, as people are watching this interview right now, they look at you, they read your story. What do you want people to learn from you about you and your story and your
Look,
approach?
yeah, look, the number one thing, if you take anything away from me, it's this: possibility exists within the mindset. Everything
Mm,
that you want to do in your life, you can do, regardless of where you come from. I am not an anomaly. I am not somehow special. I don't know
mm,
anything that anyone doesn't know. The only thing that I know to be true about my life is I should be dead or in jail. And I'm not. And I'm here talking to you today because of action and because of the belief that I had that despite whatever it is that I came from, I could still have the life that I wanted to have. And this is across the board for whatever it is. It's not exclusive to what I do. You want to be a
mm,
great dad, brother, sister, mom. You want to run a business. You want to be the next designer. You want to be a great artist. Like, okay, go do it. It's going to
mm,
be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be uncomfortable. I didn't graduate high school on time. I can barely read, and I wrote a number one best-selling book. Why?
mm,
Because I believed that I could. And then I did the really uncomfortable thing that most people don't do. Most people lay in bed and they daydream about being the dancer, being the pianist,
mm.
being the leader, being the
Right,
pastor. They
right.
daydream about
The
it.
daydream,
And
right.
then when they're called to it, they go on Instagram all day. You want to
Mm.
change your life, you are more than capable of it, but you're going to have to get out of your own way.
Mm, mm. So for that, and it's crazy because as you're saying it, right, somebody might be sitting here and say they've heard that conversation,
Sure.
they've had that conversation with themselves before. They know that, but getting to that actual mindset, taking those steps is just incredibly difficult for them. So would you say it's something like a lack of self-discipline, or they really do not believe that they can do it? What would you say to those people who are just like, Michael, I hear you, but I've tried, I've started, but I haven't, followed through. What would you say to those people right now?
Let me ask you a question. When in your life have you ever accomplished anything that was not incredibly difficult the first time you did it?
Mm,
No, seriously. Like, that's an actual question. Like this show right now, this moment. How many times did you fail until this moment? How many times did you try until
yeah,
this moment? How many
right.
times did you say, I'm going to figure it out because I believe in this until this
Mm,
moment? That's what differentiates people in the world who are successful and who are not. It's
mm,
action. Because look, the only way you're going to reframe the understanding of who you are is by doing the things that change the reframing of the understanding of who you are. If you're
mm,
sitting at home all day long wondering what if, blaming the world, oh, woe is me, guess what? Like, hard truth, and I'm sorry, you're going to have to hear this. Nobody cares.
you're right.
Nobody cares. We
You're
all
right.
have our own problems. We all have our own things going on. And to blame anyone but yourself for what's happening in your world is dismissive of your capability and your power. You
Mm,
have to be able to go look in the mirror and acknowledge your truth. Are you showing up for yourself or are you not?
right. I love that. Are you showing up for yourself or are you not? That is some definitely, I agree, something people should ask themselves every day look in the mirror and ask themselves, are they
And
or
look, let me say
are they
this too, please, as a caveat. I understand how difficult it is because the programming we've been embedded with since our youth is to be satisfied with either good enough or you're not good enough.
not?
The only mission I ever had growing up, literally the only thing I could ever think about was don't die. When I was 18
Mm,
years old, I didn't know what to do with my life. I
gosh.
graduated high school. I didn't die. My friends did. My friends were in prison. I had no idea what to do next because
Mm,
it was embedded and ingrained in me, like it is for so many people societally, to look at the measurement of capability and possibility and say, oh, that's for them. That's not for me. And as long
mm,
as you're believing that, that is where you will exist. And the only way you move through that understanding of yourself is to challenge yourself every day to do things that are so incredibly uncomfortable that you have no other choice than to grow.
mm. So developing more so a growth mindset for people who are just struggling and just feeling like they can't overcome things.
Well, look, mindset's a huge part of it. Who's going to believe in you if you don't?
Right.
You have to. And yes, it's hard. Of course it's hard. No one who's ever done anything great had an easy road. There's no
Mm,
overnight success. There's
yeah,
12 years overnight success and 30 years overnight success
right,
and 8 years overnight success.
right.
Like it takes time. You have to elicit patience. You have to deploy patience at like this huge scale. But whilst in that, like you have to be able to go and look in the mirror every single day and say like I'm going to give it my best.
Right,
And I don't
absolutely.
know everything, and I'm going to have to be humble, and I'm going to have to make a lot of mistakes, but eventually on a long enough timeline I can create that. But you have to be, look, I think people often get stuck in this notion of this idea that the first thing that they try, if it doesn't work, that means they're not successful.
Mm,
That's not true. I've failed everything I've ever done in my life. I'm going to fail today. I'm going to look back on this podcast, this conversation we're having right now, and be like, oh, that was a huge mistake. Shouldn't have said that thing. Right. But the truth is, the reality about it is that I'm going to keep going. I'm
mm,
so
mm,
driven. What are you obsessed about? Like, can you
mm,
identify the thing that you want, that you desire so much that you're willing to die for it? Because
mm,
look, it might be hair care products, or it might be shoe design, or it might be just being a good person. It doesn't matter what it is, but what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? People quit before it even gets hard. People
mm,
quit before they even get to the starting line. They go
right.
do all the training. They do
Mm,
all the training, they do all the work. And then when it comes time to click the button to put it in the world, they don't do it because they're
they can do.
terrified about
Yeah,
what other people think about them. Look, I'm
you're
going to be
right.
real with you. Like the truth is, there's 8 billion people on planet Earth. Nobody knows who you are.
Absolutely. You're right.
It's true.
You're so right. That's so, and I'm laughing because I can't tell you the amount of times, like you said earlier, going back and looking at the podcast, or just me myself, watching video and like, I don't want to upload that because I made this mistake or this error. And like you said, there's 8 million people. Nobody knows who you are. People don't care like that.
Yeah, nobody cares.
I mean, it might be, some people might be like, oh man, it's talking kind of strong, but it's facts. It's the truth. Absolutely. And that's another thing, as I'm listening to you, as I'm talking to you, I kind of love, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of get the gist of you kind of having like maybe not a tough love approach necessarily, but you're just all about truth. You don't seem to sugarcoat and anything like that. You're just spitting out the facts and telling people this is the reality. And just, is that kind of something that did you always start off that way coaching, or it's something you developed over time, or you do it for yourself and that's kind of what you found what works? Because I wouldn't say everyone who's a mental health coach, is coming out just like you are and just saying what it is.
Look, I mean, like for real, think about this. We live in such a strange society, especially in America. I'm sure you have people that listen all over the world, but especially in America, we live in the society that says sugarcoat the truth so you don't hurt people's feelings. That's how
Mhm.
we got into this situation. Stop fronting, like for real, stop fronting, because here's the truth about it. You need to tell people the truth. Here, let me lay the foundation for this.
Okay.
When I was 26 years old and I decided to get serious about this healing journey and go and get my life right, because look, it was hard. I had a lot of darkness I had to work through. Drinking yourself to sleep at night is indicative of some dark things, right?
Mm,
And in that, one of the things that I recognized, I had no idea who I was. I had no idea who I was in the terms of what I stood for, what I wanted to
mm,
do, how I wanted to present myself in the world. And so that started this really hard climb. And when I was about 29, 30 maybe, somewhere in that window, I was at a personal growth conference and they were talking about values. And for the first time in my life, I realized I have no idea what I actually stand for. I can ask most people right now to name their values, and they have no idea. Mine
mm,
are honesty, leadership, kindness, and self actualization. Those are the pillars and the baseline for how I exist in the world. Honesty is number one. Thus, I will
mm,
step into honesty. I don't believe in sugarcoating because it's not helping anyone. We're so
mm,
afraid to tell each other the truth. Look, is the truth going to hurt? Yeah,
mm.
sometimes, but it also will make your life a lot better. Like realistically, like the thing is, you think about this right now, there are people in relationships, in jobs, in partnerships, in environments they shouldn't be in, who are lying to themselves every single day. And they're
Mm,
scared to tell themselves the truth first. And so when you
mm.
get a mirror, someone like me to come in and keep it real with you, like you're going to discover something about yourself. And so my intention is never, you can ask any of the clients I've worked with thousands of people around the world, athletes, celebrities, moms, dads, teachers, regular people, architects, like everybody, right? The
Wow.
number one thing about this is when you step into this arena, I'm going to be real with you, because if any other place, this is a place of safety where the
Mm,
truth, they say the truth can set you free. I agree. The truth will give you permission. The truth will give you a catalyst. The truth will give you everything that you need. Stop running from it.
stop running
And my
from it.
approach is not meant to be this aggressive by default for the sake of doing it. That's nonsense. That doesn't bring value to anyone's life. And people will often misconstrue the truth with being unkind. It's not.
Mm.
But we're told that it is, because from a societal perspective, why are you so honest all the time? What are you talking about? This is nonsense. This is nonsense not to be truthful and honest, because every time you walk past that mirror, you got to decide whether or not you're good with who's on the reflection.
You're right. You're right. Ugh.
I
You are
know I'm right
saying,
because I had to do this for myself.
mm, mm,
Millions of people need to do this for themselves. I dare you to go look in the mirror for 5 minutes. I dare you. It'll be the
mm,
hardest thing you've ever done, because I had to. At
mm.
26 years old, that was literally the thing that changed my life forever. I looked at
Wow.
my own reflection in the mirror and I recognized for the first time ever I had not been honest with myself.
Wow. So is that my next question for you was going to be, when you were in the midst of your trauma, when your mom cut off your end of it, all of when your friends were being murdered or going to jail, if you could go back to your younger self during those times, what would be the one thing that you would tell yourself in the midst of you dealing and experiencing the trauma?
So I'll give you two answers. One is nothing, because I wouldn't have listened anyway. Um, for real, like there's nothing that anyone could tell me. Like
Mm,
I had it all figured out, right?
okay.
As most kids do, because we're
Right.
kids and we don't know anything, and our developmental years have been run askew because of the
Yeah.
cortisol impact of traumatic experience, and so we can't make meaning of anything, and so we're just in this complexly chaotic state.
Mm,
So to argue with someone who already has the answers is pointless.
mm,
The other part of that is that I would sit with them and I would say, one day this will make sense. Keep
hmm.
going. It's
Mm,
like Roosevelt said, if you're going through hell, keep going.
mm.
Because like realistically, actually, you know what? I'm gonna change that, because this is probably more true, is
Okay.
that I would say follow your intuition. Because in
Mm,
those moments when it shows up, that gut feeling, it's going to save your life. Don't ever argue with it. Because here's the thing that happened multiple times in my life. And we have this, our gut feeling, that spidey sense, that
mm,
exists for a reason. Multiple times in my teens, when one of my friends got arrested, I was supposed to be there. When one of my friends, my best friend, got arrested with cocaine, and had to do
Mm,
years in prison. As a juvenile, excuse me, he was in juvenile.
mm.
I was over 18. I would still be in prison if I got in the car with him that night. My gut said, don't go. But in the same way
Wow.
we listen to our gut about the things that we shouldn't do, we have to listen to our intuition about the things that we should do. So I would have
Mm,
told myself, realistically, if it was one thing, I would have said, when that intuition pops up, when that weird spidey sense anxiety feeling shows up, don't you ever not listen to that. Double negative, but you get it.
yes, no, I absolutely get it, and I think that's very key, and a lot of times, I think that's why, like you said earlier, since we don't wanna face the truth, we tend to ignore our gut feeling when we know it's trying to tell us something,
Yeah.
but we tend to ignore it. So I did want to hear if you're willing to share with us any like touching moments or from you with your clients that kind of really touched you or any special stories that you want to share about them coming through your program or even reading your book and how it's helped them. If you wanted to share, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, there's so many stories. My favorite, literally my favorite moment in what I do is the moment where someone just says, "Hey, I got it. From here.
Mm,
Thank you. I got it." Because what that means is that I've given them actual tools.
mm.
There's, and not to be negative, but there's a lot of people spinning some yarns. There's a lot of people out here selling some snake oil, right? For
Right,
real.
right.
It's really difficult, and it puts me in a precarious situation
Mm,
because to step into this environment, you're faced with something that other people aren't going to give you, the
mhm.
truth. Plus a toolkit. I literally built out an entire foundation in this. And the best part of it, whether it's 12 weeks in, or if you just read the book, or you listen to the podcast, or you follow me
Right.
on social, every day I get a message from someone who says, "This saved my life." Like, that is
Wow.
so profound to
Wow.
think about. I've been in positions in my life where that would never be the case. And
Mm,
today it happens all the time, has become a further catalyst for me to not stop. It's what drives me when I work a 16-hour day and it's 9 o'clock at night and I've been going since 6 a.m. and I got to
mm,
do it again the next day and the next day and the next day. And I don't take days off. There's no Sundays. There's no weekends in this, because if
mm,
I'm going to reach my goal of ending generational trauma, it takes a huge amount of effort, and
right.
from a communal perspective too. And so these moments when I know that someone is stepping into the world now understanding two things: that they have the ability to be the hero of their own story in conjunction with living life on their terms, which is super important. That means that exponentially I now have created another growth step in
Mm,
reaching my goal. And nothing drives me more than that. And that happens every single day.
absolutely. I can only imagine. So I did want to go back because what you mentioned is really key. We live in a time period where with social media, I hate to say it, but everybody's kind of like a coach these days, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't even have to be in the mental health arena. It could be business, lifestyle coach, fitness influencers, and there's all these different, mass opinions. And this is the way to approach childhood trauma. This is the way to approach healing, and different things like that. So, if you could narrow it down, maybe to one thing or a couple of things that sets you apart, you believe, as opposed to others, because some people may be listening now and saying, well, what he's saying sounds really great, but that's not what I saw, from this coach on Instagram, or that's not what my therapist told me, it's not what the counselor told me. So what would be those things that you would say sets you apart as opposed to the others?
Well, more importantly, what I would say is, like, what draws you into someone, right? Follow
Hmm.
your heart. Like,
Hmm.
if you sit this and you hear what I'm saying and it feels like your truth, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's called alignment. And if you're like,
Mm-hmm.
screw this guy, is a psychopath, well, that's fine too. Go live your best life. But, like, realistically, at the end of the day, like, whether or not we set apart, I don't care, because I don't care what other people do. Because realistically, the people who are supposed to hear my message, they will find it. They
Mm.
will hear it. And the
Mm.
people who hear the other messages, well, so be it. And look, there's no right or wrong. Look, healing this trauma thing, this is still new. Like,
Mm,
I got all these certifications, all these certificates. I've learned from the best people in the world, and some of them I agree with and some of them I don't. But every
mm,
single day I take little pieces of data, and that helps me better understand something in alignment with my mission. And
mm,
so you know who you're in connection with. You,
right.
like, inherently, we know if somebody's full of crap. We can look at it, we can measure it, we can have the conversation. When we're in connection with them, it feels weird. Something's
Mm,
off. Now,
mm,
from a scientific perspective and a research perspective, I think if people are out here like giving false truths, that's a whole different conversation that we have to have.
right.
Recently, I did
Absolutely.
correct a coach on social media who was not
Mm,
keeping it real about statistics involving the long-term ramifications of childhood trauma. And so I popped in
mm,
there and now I'm blocked. Okay, respect. Go live your best life. I'm going to keep doing me. I'm going to keep doing this
mm,
thing because, like, I made a decision when I started this process. You want to know what separates me from everyone? It's very simple. I'm going to die doing this.
mm. Mm, that is so powerful that you're gonna die doing this. I do want to share something which really kind of moved me about you. I remember you made a post about your book, and somebody had reviewed your book and said it didn't really help them that much. And I remember how courageous I thought you were to even post that book, to even post that review, because out of all the people that I follow on social media who may be doing what you're doing, you're in different avenues or industries, I rarely see anybody post when they're not successful or about their failures or about their errors or the times they messed up. And I thought
Mhm.
that was so courageous of you. And I was so inspired. And to me, it actually made me more drawn to you and made me think that this person is someone who's really real and authentic, actually, to put it frankly. Because I was like, you know, on social media, I hate to say it, but there are a lot of frauds, I feel.
Mhm.
And so I kind of wanted you to just expand a little bit more on why you did that, because I think it's something that viewers can learn from by you just doing that.
Yeah, because it's the truth.
Mm,
Like, it's just the truth. Like, I think about this all the time. Like, people, this is what I was talking about. People quit before the finish line.
mm,
My finish line is not there yet. That
mm,
review can make me stop. I don't care what people think about me. Now, look, let's be careful. Contextually, I think a lot of the argument of that particular post was that they didn't like the grammar of the book. I wrote a number one best-selling book. I didn't graduate high school on time. I got learning disabilities. You think I give a damn about your grammar? Like, let's go. Like, let's keep it real. The other part of it, which I think is more important, is that we have to share our failures as much as we share our victories, because if you're going to be in this space, it ain't all sunshines, rainbows, bollies, and happiness. Like, it's hard.
mm,
What people don't see is me up at 6 a.m., 5:30 a.m.,
mm,
going all day, 8, 9,
mm.
10 o'clock at night sometimes,
Gosh,
doing nothing but moving towards creating this. And so
God.
when someone sends me something negative or posts a review that's bad or says, Michael sucks, like, fine. Okay. The reason I shared that was for a very specific reason. I wanted people to understand one simple thing, that you are not for everybody. But just because you're not for everyone
Mm,
doesn't mean you quit.
mm, so powerful. I think that's so key what you said. You are not for everyone. Because
Yeah.
you're right. People will get one bad review and think I could never make it. Like you said, your book is a best seller. And so speaking of your book, can you just kind of give us a little highlight or overview of your book?
Yeah, 100%. So Think Unbroken was the book that I needed, that I felt like didn't exist within the construct of trauma healing at the time. And so it's part self-help guide, But more importantly, it's part intrinsic reflection because I built it to be a journal so that as you're in it, as you're writing, as you're creating, like you're stepping into understanding who it is that you are in a different level. It's actually going to challenge you to create an understanding and a framework of the person that you are today. People think it's my life story. And while it is intertwined, because I think it has to be by necessity, it's not about me. This book is about you. And so I took all of the things that I understand about this journey that became the base. And look, this is the first book. My second book's about to come out. I'm going to write 50 books before I die. That is a goal. And so this is only a small portion of the framework of what I think it takes to start the journey. Right. So it's Think Unbroken, understanding and overcoming. But at baseline, it's a guide.
Love that. Absolutely love that. And I think that's incredible that you want to write 50 books before you die. That is quite a goal, but that is awesome. And we look forward. So my final two questions are, in terms of 5, 10, 15 years from now, what are your hopes and dreams for the future? And then where can people go to learn more about you?
So first, I'm on Michael Unbroken everywhere. Podcast, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, Tumblr, Twitter, MySpace, like all of them. So Michael Unbroken everywhere. My like 15 years from now, I think about, I future write all the time. When I write my goals, I actually write about the things that I've accomplished. I don't write about things I want to do because I want to envision them and create them into reality. And so in 15 years from now, the Think Unbroken University Foundation will be educating minority and impoverished children at scale across the world in mindset and trauma healing. That's my number one. Obviously, I want to turn this into a multi-million-dollar business. And the reason why I don't care about money doesn't concern me at all. But you can't make real impact in the world without it. And so my goal is to empower people around the world to move towards ending generational trauma by forcing them effectively to invest in themselves and then taking that money, putting it into the foundation and creating my trickle up effect through expansion of our youth. That's my goal. That's the only thing I care about every single day as I'm moving forward, as I'm putting myself in this position to create the life in the world and the change that I want to be. It's through the support of people showing up because they know that they need to create change in their own life.
Gosh, that is so powerful. Absolutely. Well, Michael, you have been just phenomenal, which I know you're used to hearing. But you are incredible. All of the things that you have said, I know people, I'm left learning and completely mindset change just by the little 30 minutes that we have here. I would love to have you back on the show. Thank you so much for taking time of your day. And please keep us posted as well on when that next second book comes out, because I'd love to bring you back on to talk about that. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Thank you.
I appreciate you so much. I thank you for the space and the time and sharing me with your audience. And I'm happy to come back anytime.
Yes, absolutely. And I know if anybody's looking to reach out to you, I have it at the bottom of the screen, but I will be sure to send them your way as well.
Amazing. Thank you, my friend. I will see you soon.
Yes, thank you. All right, you guys, he was just absolutely phenomenal and incredible. So now that we have finished with his interview, we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to finish the interview that I was playing earlier before Michael was able to jump and join us. So stay tuned.